All right, our shirts looks great, but they are just static models. We need to make them interactive. The goal is that when a user clicks on a shirt, it navigates them to that page. To make this happen, we need to do two things. First, create the destination pages for each shirt. And second, make our 3D model clickable and wire them up to those pages. So let's start by creating the pages. In the app directory, I'll create a new folder called shirts. And within it, we will use Next.js dynamic routing by creating another folder called slug. So let's do that by saying slug. Okay. This slug folder will capture the shirt's name in the URL. Finally, inside that, we will create our page file. For now, we just need a simple page to test our navigation. So I'm going to run R3f. Perfect. Now that our target pages exist, let's go back to our main study model.tsx component and make those shirts clickable. We will use two key tools from Nextjs here. One, the use router hook to handle the navigation. And the second is built-in prefetching capability. So what is prefetching? Prefetching will silently load the details for all 3 shirt pages in the background. So when a user clicks, the transition is instant and super smooth. Now, right below this, useRef hook, I'm going to go ahead and create a const router equals to use router from next navigation. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and create a useEffect hook. And then we're going to say, run this when the router change. And then within the body, we're going to iterate through the shirts, which is an array that contains objects. So let's say shirts dot for each. And then we're going to say, take a single shirt. And then we're going to say router dot prefetch, and let's import the URL by saying shirts. As you can see, shirts and the slug. Shirts. So what is a slug? We're going to say shirt dot slug. There we go. All right. After that, I'm going to go ahead and add the onClick handler here. So let's create a onClick event first, and then we're going to say handle click, which is going to take a shirts.slug. All right, now let's create that handle click function. So right below this leave handler, I'm going to create a function which is called handle click, and it'll take a slug, and the slug is a type of string. And then we're going to say router.push, and then we're going to say shirts slash slug. All right, here we go. Now, as you can see, if I click one of the shirts, you can see that it has navigated to this specific page. Now you can see that the page is right over here. All right, our navigation is working perfectly. Now the next step is to create individual pages for each shirt with their own 3D model. So in page.tsx, the naive way would be to create a new canvas for every single page. So for example, I'm going to create another canvas here. And then within the canvas, we're going to load these models. As you can see, each shirt has 3 different 3D models. And after that, we got to create 3 different canvas for each models. So that would be terrible for performance. So each new canvas is a new Threejs context, a new WebGL context. It's heavy, and it would cause a full reload of our 3D assets every time we navigate, which is not the smooth experience we want. Luckily, the React 3 drei has a component that solves this exact problem. It's called view. Think of view as a window or portal into a single shirt canvas. It allows us to have multiple 3D scenes throughout our app while still using just one global canvas. This means buttery smooth transition and no performance penalty. So first thing first, we need to modify the view canvas itself. All right, instead of hard coding the model right here, we're going to say view coming from React 3 drei dot port. I'm sorry, the port would be uppercase. Now let's add this view canvas in layout so that we can use it globally. All right, now Within this body, I'm going to say view canvas. There we go. All right, now let's head to the page.tsx. And then in here, I'm going to remove the view canvas because we have already added in the layout.tsx so that we can use it globally. And then I'm going to add a JSX fragment. And then within it, I'm going to say view from React 3 drei. And then within the view, I'm going to add main studio model. There we go. All right, now since we are using 3D components here, we need to add use client right at the top. So I'm going to say use client. All right, now as you can see, you cannot see anything here. So we need to add a class name here, just like a normal HTML CSS. So for the view, let's give it a class name of w-full and h-dvh. There we go. Now, as you can see, our model is taking the full height of the screen. If you look closely, as I hover my mouse over a shard, you can see that the events are not working. So in order to fix this problem, we're going to say use the events from the body element, which is based right over here. So let's head back to the view canvas. For the canvas, I'm going to create a new property of event source. And in order to fill this event source, we need to create a useState hook. So let's say USSS, useState hook snippets, and let's say event source. And for initial value, I'm going to set it to null. And the type would be HTML element, null. All right, now let's import that useState hook. All right, now in here, I'm going to add the event source here. And we're going to say if it was empty, let's define it undefined. All right, now in order to make that work, let's create a useEffect hook. And then we're going to say run this for the first time. Now let's set the event source to document.body. All right, now as you can see, the events has been identified. Perfect. All right, now let's recap what is event source. By default, the canvas listens for events like mouse click, moves, and scrolls, only within its own container. But our canvas is now a fixed overlay that covers the entire screen. If we click on a button outside the canvas wouldn't know about it. Setting event source to document.body tells Threejs, hey, don't just listen for events on your own div, listen for events on the entire body of the page instead. This ensures that our orbit controls and any clicks handler on our 3D objects work perfectly, no matter where the user's cursor is on the screen. All right, now, since we are currently on page.tsx, so let's add some sort of HTML elements here. And let's also make this responsive. All right, so let's head to the page.tsx. And just like normal HTML, right below this view, I'm going to go ahead and create a paragraph. And then let's say select a product to begin. All right, now let's give this paragraph a class name of absolute. And let's say z-10 top-11/12, which is going to take 91% of the top. And then let's say place self center in order to make that center. As you can see, the text is right over here. And after that, we're going to say text-white/80. And for medium and large devices, make the text extra small. And for mobile devices, we're going to say text-10 pixel. Okay. Let's say font-medium and tracking-wider. All right, now below this paragraph, I'm going to go ahead and create a self-closing div in order to create a button. So let's give it a class name of absolute z-20 and top-10/12 gonna take 83% and left-1/12 bg-white. Let's make a mask -URL. Let's close that up. And the URL is icons left-s3g. And then let's set the size to 12. There we go. Now you can see the icon. And mask dash no dash repeat. And let's add a border hover dash animation. And for medium and large devices, make it hidden. Otherwise, make it block. Now if I make the browser bigger, you can see that it's invisible. Perfect. All right, now I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this and paste it right here. And this time, instead of saying left, we're gonna say right. Okay, now let's change the left to right. There we go. So right now in mobile devices, in order to make other shirts visible on a center, we need to create an event for these buttons. So right above this return, first I'm gonna create a useState hook. I'm gonna run a useState snippets, and then I'm gonna say current index. And for initial value, I'm gonna set it to 1. And for the type, and let's import that useState hook. Here we go. All right, the reason why I add this 1 because the current index is 1, which represents this sports shirt. And when it is 0, it represents the white shirt. And whenever it is 2, it represents the gray one. Now, as you can see, we have already defined it right over here. The first one is white, which index of 0. Second one is sport 1, and the gray one is 2. Now let's get back to this page.tsx. All right, now I'm going to create a const handle pref, and I'm going to say if current index was larger 0, we're going to set the current index, and we're going to select that pref, and then we're going to say pref minus 1. So let's create that event here by saying onClick, saying handle pref. Beautiful. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to duplicate this, and this time we're going to say handle next. And then here we're going to change that. If the current index was below 2, we're going to add the current index by 1. There we go. Now let's also implement this. Right here I'm going to say onClick is equals to handle next. Beautiful. All right, now in order to use this current index, we need to pass this into main studio model. So in here I'm going to say current index is equals to a current index. All right, now let's add this current index to the main studio model. It'll take a current index. So let's define a type for current index. Type would be number. All right, now when we have the current index value, for example, equals to 0, we're going to make that white shirt to be centered. And all of these shirts move to the left side. So in order to achieve that, we need to use GSAP animation again. So right below this use GSAP hook, I'm going to create another use GSAP hook. And then this time we're going to say, if we have the current index, run this hook. All right, so within the body, we're going to say if window dot inner width was larger than 768 pixel, which means that when we are on a desktop mode, we don't need to run this animation. So we're going to return it. So in here, I'm going to run a for loop. We'll say let I equals to 0, I mesh refs dot current dot length, and then I plus plus. All right. Now within the for loop, we're going to say const mesh equals to mesh refs dot current. We're going to take a single mesh, and then we're going to say if that mesh wasn't available, return it. And after that, we're going to use switch statement by saying switch. And then for the key, I'm going to say current index. So if the current index value was 0, what we're going to do is make all of these shirts to the left side until the white shirt gets centered. So if I scroll up, you can see that if we divide this minus 0.65, everything's gonna goes on the left side. So let's do that. So for the case 0, I'm going to say GSAP.to mesh.position. And then we're going to say make the x mesh.position.x minus 0.6, which means that take the x position of that mesh and then divide it by 0.6. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to add a console log here. You guys can see it, the current index one. So let's open up the dev tool. Let's head to the console. Let's refresh that. Now, as you can see, the current index is 1, which represents the sport shirt. Now, if I click on this left button, it'll go on the left side, which represents the 0 index. Here we go. We can actually add 0.65 in order to make it accurate. Beautiful. Now it is on center. Now let's add the other ones. If the current index was 1, what we're going to do? We're going to reset everything to back its default. So we're going to say GSAP.to mesh.position, and then we're going to select the X position, and let's say shirts. I'm going to select in this shirts, this object. And as you can see, we have the defaults values in shirts. I'm going to say shirts with that current index dot position, and let's take that X value. And let's say Z shirts with the current index dot position. I'm going to say 2, which represents the Z axis. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and copy this one. And let's also add the break here and paste that right over here. And we're going to say if the current index was 2, we're going to add positive 0.6. And let's get rid of this default value. Okay. All right, now let's refresh the page. Now, if I click on the previous button, the white shirt is going to show. If I click on this button again, it's going to go right side. Beautiful. All right, now let's actually complete this animation in order to make it even beautiful. So in here, I'm going to say GSAP.to. We're going to select the mesh.rotation. And then we're going to set the y-axis back to 0. And after that, I'm going to set the GSAP.to again. And this time I'm going to say mesh.refs.current 0.1, which means that we are targeting the mesh with the 0 index, which means the white shirt. And then we're going to select that position specifically. And then we're going to set that Z to 0. Why I didn't do this here? Because we are targeting all of the shirts here. But here we just only focus on the white shirt. All right, now let's add the another GSAP animation.to mesh refs.current. And again, I'm going to target this sport shirt, which is in the middle. And I'm going to make the position of Z axis in order to move it back minus 0.45. All right, let's refresh it again. Now, if I click on this button, you can see that the sport shirt's gonna shrink down, scale down. Do you see that? It scales down and the white shirts scales up. And don't worry about this animation. We're gonna fix that later. Okay. All right, after that, we also need to change the environment background. So set environment material. I'm gonna say mats.white studio. All right, now for the sport shirt, we're gonna set the inv material to mats.red studio. And for the gray one, I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this, copy all of this, and paste that right over here. And this time, instead of targeting the white shirt, we're gonna target the gray shirt. And then we're gonna make it 0 and also white shirt minus 0.45. And let's make the studio gray studio. Now let's refresh it again. Okay. As you can see, the background is changing based on the shirt. Beautiful. All right, now finally, we also need to make our shirt responsive. So let's do that. So let's head back to the page.tsx. And then let's also remove the unnecessary imports. Beautiful. All right, now what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna go ahead and open up terminal. And then in here, I'm gonna run npm install react-responsive. All right. Let's close the terminal. And right above the useState hook, I'm going to create a const is mobile is equals to useMediaQuery hook. And then within it, I'm going to define a max width of 400 pixel. All right, now let's copy this. And then after that, we need to change the scale of the main studio model based on the screen size. So in here, I'm going to add a scale equals to, if you are in mobile mode, use this scale, otherwise make it 1. All right, now let's add the scale into main studio model. So let's say scale. Scale is also a number. All right, now let's copy this and let's apply it to this group. So I'm going to say scale is equals to that scale. There we go. Now let's refresh it. All right, now let's open up the dev tool and then in here, shrink it down. You can see that it's going to react to the screen size. Beautiful. All right, the minor issue that we have right now is that when you hover over this button, you can see that it suddenly goes on the left side. So we don't want that. And this will also bring a bad experience on mobile devices. For example, if I click on this button, you can see that it goes left side. So we don't want this. So in order to fix this, let's head back to the view canvas.tsx. And then right below this event source, we're going to add a event prefix. So this time we're going to choose a client. So what is event prefix? In React 3 Fiber, events like onClick are custom React events. Under the hood, R3f has to translate native browser events like click into these custom events. The event prefix props tells R3f what kind of events to listen for. The default is client, which means it will listen for events like client X and client Y. The standard mouse and touch events we use for web pages. Let's refresh it. Now, if I click on this button, everything's gonna work perfectly. There we go. Now it is not gonna move our screen to the left side. Beautiful. I'm gonna get rid of these console.log. There we go. Now let's collapse this use GSAP hook. Awesome, our main studio scene is now complete. We've got our 3D environment, interactive and animated shirts that user can click on, and smooth navigation all set up. So the next phase of our project is to bring these shirts pages to life with their own dedicated 3D models and product details.